Hello everyone, welcome back. Thank you for joining me. And in this video, we're going to cover the last part of the series in which we are going to integrate GitHub into our code and learn to use GitHub as a central detection repository, a basic one at least. So the first thing I want to do is to create the function that is going to integrate with GitHub. And I also want to show you guys before we move on, you need to have a token created for GitHub, and you also need to have a repository which you're going to store all of your detections. So I already created my token. You can do that from your settings, personal access tokens. And just give it all of the permissions and set the expiry into whatever you want. And after you create the token, I created a repository called QR scripts, and that's going to serve as a companion example to the course. So we're going to go back here in a few moments. So let's create the function and show how everything is working together. So I want to first authenticate and grab the token value from the user interface. And then use that token as the authentication class and path it into the GitHub class. And then I'm going to grab the name of the repo that the user enters in the user interface, and it's going to check whether the token has access to that repo. And then we're grabbing the content of the repo. And for each element, we're going to check if it's a directory, because we use directories to store our detections. And we're going to update the user interface with each directory name. Okay, so that should be the basic of this. Let's create the binding event listener. And it should work now. So I'm going to grab my token and paste it, and the name of the repository, and click on authenticate. And once I do that, it should list all of the available detections I have in the repo in the form of a directory. And there it is. And it shows only one because there's only one directory here. And we're going to add capabilities so that it would pull the description. We have a description file here. And I also wanted to pull the meter information. And after we do that, we're going to implement a functionality to import the rule into QRadar directly from GitHub. So first, let's build our description. So in order to do that, I'm going to create a function called on directory selected. So it's going to trigger every time we're selecting a different element in the list of rules that we have. And we're gonna call this directory path. And we're going to grab the textual value of the selected index. And then we're grabbing all of the content inside the directory that we selected. And for each element in our directory, let's check if the name equals description markdown. So we want to update the user interface to show the description of the rule. And we need to make sure we encode it correctly. Oh, I forgot something here. We first need to iterate over each index. Yeah, like this. Okay. Moving on. And then we want to update the user interface itself. So we're going to do self.github rule description, set text, do description content. And after this, I want to check if the name of the file is readme. Then what we want to do is grab the content, split it line by line. And then we're going to populate each Mitri label with the relevant information. So let's do self.tactic label, set text, readme content lines 0, because if you take a look here, the tactic is the first one, the technique is the second one, sub-technique, and then required telemetry. So, I mean, obviously you can change the order, but that's how I did it. And the reason we increment by 2 and not by 1 is due to new lines, so you want to skip that. Okay. So now that should work, and I also need to bind it. And the binding is going to look a bit different. Um, we're going to use a selection changed event listener. And on directory selected. Okay. Let's give that a try. Paste the token. Paste the repo name. And now when I press the name of the folder, it's supposed to populate all of the other UI elements. And there it is. So the description is being pulled from the description.md file. And then the MITRE information is being pulled from README file. And now let's implement the capability to import the rule directly into QRadar from the repository itself. So I'm gonna log into my instance and I'm going to delete this rule so that we can make sure that our import capability works. Good. Okay. Now what I want to do is to implement the import from GitHub. So let's see how we can do that. So it should be quite simple because we already have the logic from the other import function. So we can just copy that. And let me think how we can design it well. Okay, let's create a function called import rules GitHub. Let's use our usual variables, base URL, QRadar URL, text, and let's use our headers as well, same headers. I'm not gonna use version. And params. And same one as we already used. So I'm actually going to copy the same code that I used in the import function before we integrated with GitHub. So just to save the time here, I'm just gonna copy and paste this. Okay. So this function is going to be in charge of importing the rule from GitHub. And the way it works is that we also need the data itself. And in order to grab the data, we also need to read the file. One moment, it should be below params. Yes. And we also want to file name. And I'm gonna explain how all of this is tied together after we create the second function. Okay, so now that we have that, I want to create another function, and we're gonna call that this is actually going to integrate with the GitHub side of the import, and this one is dealing with the QRadar side of the import in the context of GitHub. So let's call this one import rules from GitHub. And we're gonna do some checks. If the URL is empty, okay. So we're gonna grab the selected indexes as well. Grab the text value. Okay, so now we want to actually pass into the first function we created the contents of the zip file so that it can be imported from GitHub to QRadar directly. So if it's a file and it ends with a zip, I'm gonna grab the download URL. Send a GET request, download the content in memory. And if the download was successful, we're going to write the contents of the file into a local file. And we're going to pass the name of the file into the other function that we created so that it can import the file into QRadar. I'm going to pass the file name. And we're going to bind this function as well. Okay. Okay, that looks good. So what we're doing basically is that every time that a user is clicking the import button in the GitHub view, first of all, it's calling this function here, right? Which basically iterates over the repo and the folder. And if it finds a zip file inside the folder, it's going to download the file and pass the file name into the import function, actual import function, which is this one. And this one is getting the file name from the other function that's ran and saved the file locally. And the data of the file is a binary representation of the file, which is being passed into the data section of the header so that it can be imported successfully. So what I'm going to do now is give it a run. Okay, and authentication is successful. This part is successful. So now, like we've seen, this rule does not exist in our QRadar. We deleted it, it's empty. So now I'm going to import it directly from the GitHub repo. It's going to grab the zip file, download it locally, and then upload that file into QRadar. So let's see if it's actually working. And the URL must not be empty, of course. Forgot about that. Give it a few moments. And successfully installed. So now if I'm gonna go back here and refresh, we see that the rule is successfully installed with all of the dependencies, exactly how it was configured at the beginning. And this happened directly from GitHub. It took the zip file, downloaded it locally, and then uploaded it into QRadar. And now we can see that the rather complex operation was completed successfully. So this was the last practical part. And in the next video, I'm going to say some closing remarks and suggest some improvements to the program. So I will see you there, and thank you for watching until now.